Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. It's October. It's the 8th. It's 2020. I don't believe any of those dates are accurate whatsoever at all. But at any rate, I just put a video up, a couple hours ago, I think, and we're live streaming on 2 channels while they're still up right now. But I was fortunate enough to catch Days of Noah at the right time and get him back on because we got a lot to talk about. Days, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
What's up, man? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again, Rich.
No doubt, no doubt. Anytime, man. So before anyone asks, here's his website, here's his YouTube channel. He also has a Patreon channel. You can find all the links right here. And there's some incredibly high quality information on here. One of the videos I always harp about is America the Blight. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. America the Blight. And in 20 minutes, he basically encompasses pretty much everything we're facing as a nation, as a humanity. And it doesn't seem like people are catching on, but I say that, and I'm going to show information right now that shows that some people are catching on. So it's quite the strange time we find ourselves in right now. First of all, what's the wildfire situation in your area? And did you guys pick up any additional rioting or protests due to the officer being released on $1 million?
No real rioting. There's definitely been localized demonstrations, but nothing crazy and wild like I was expecting. I think those are soon to come. But the fires have died down quite a bit, pretty much in control in most places. Actually, there's new ones though, up in the Calistoga area. So they're continuing just in different areas. And we'll see how it transpires. But as of now, things are definitely a lot better. Clear skies, breathable air. And I'm not threatened to the point of evacuation. So that I'm thankful for that.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Because I know for quite a while there, you weren't sure which way to go or which thing was going to force you out. So
exactly.
I'm glad you're kind of good to go for right now. Take it. I just reminded Mike Decker, I just gave him one of the examples of, here, take my advice. I'm not using it. I said, dude, while you're outside, appreciate walking barefoot on the grass. Appreciate the fact that the sun is only partially obscured with chemtrails today. You can still see a little, and it's not quite as smoky because the Western United States has been smoked out unbelievably, man. And meanwhile, the Minnesota National Guard's been activated because people are stealing candy bars and bags of chips from convenience stores, protesting. So, it looks like they're ramping it up again. We were waiting for something. It looks like they're ramping it up again, and apparently they are. So,
yeah. I mean, there's so much more to come. I mean, just imagine when the trial begins. It's going to be a whole new OJ situation all over again.
Hopefully we make it that far because
exactly
the signs that they're giving us are ominous. Like I showed you this one a few minutes ago. I find this very strange because I was explaining this to Mike, not that he didn't already know, but every single thing a president does is scripted. His public relations people, that's why I did the video on Edward Bernays the other day. His public relations people, everything that this dude says, reads, every photo op, every picture, everything is precisely calculated. And then you've got Trump. I mean, this is a strange thing. And Mike Decker reminded me of the 27 Club where we were losing musicians at 27 years old. He reminded me that he remembered he saw covers where people like Kurt Cobain, et cetera, were doing the same symbol with a gun to their head. And this simply reminded me of our earlier conversation where I was talking about Snoop Dogg putting the gun to his head, and he's even kind of making a clown face. Can you make any sense of this, or am I just overblowing nothing?
It's
be honest, brother. Be honest.
Again, it always comes back to the occult and the esoteric being elusive. We cannot necessarily pinpoint anything with pure accuracy. It's always going to be speculative. But again, I mean, there is the presence of spiritual activity here. There is the esoteric and occult. We know that they work in the darkness. So this very well could be exactly what you're saying. It's just hard to really say for sure. But It's creepy for lack of a better term. It's definitely irresponsible on his part if he were to be doing this just, by accident. And I don't really believe in accidents, man. I don't really believe in coincidences per se. So it seems more and more as all of this transpires that these things are rolling out as predicted, and this could very well be some type of predictive programming or some signaling of some sort. It's weird, man. It's just too much lines up to just throw into the coincidence barrel.
I agree. I agree. So let's go from one Donald Trump photo op to a Donald Trump tweet, because those are always entertaining for everybody involved. This blew me away, and I don't follow politics. I don't follow anything. Anything you see in a video or a live stream was pretty much sent to me by a subscriber, almost always. That's how I get it. That's how I run with it. But this was really, really odd. And I know people already were killing him in the replies with he spelt forest wrongs. But this is a strange thing to say. Now, if you remember, before RFB2, before my main backup channel got locked, and it just got unlocked yesterday, the last video I put up was about Lockheed Martin coming out on YouTube saying 2020 is the year for directed energy. When I read the title of that video, I looked at that as a threat. And then I see this tweet from Trump saying, vote for Trump in California, after somebody apparently, this is ridiculous. Nobody snuck in there and put this enormous Trump sign up undetected. So I don't understand what this is all about. But the fact that he wrote, vote Trump, there'll be no more blackouts, shutdowns, or ridiculous forest fires, as though he has an on-off switch to control them. And then threatening water rationing coming soon. I think I'm gonna do an entire video on this, but the fact that he's saying, no, if you vote for me, there'll be no more ridiculous forest fires because I have the hand of God and I can turn them on or off, which we know that they can. We've caught them on video. Dutch Sense has caught them. A Plain Truth has caught them. Never Lose Truth has caught them. Tons of channels have caught them with their own radar, literally using lasers that we know exist. They denied it last year or the year before. And then suddenly on YouTube, like so many revelations of 2020, Lockheed Martin comes out and says 2020 is the year for directed energy. And then we see this tweet. Am I just overblowing this, or does that seem really strange?
It does seem strange, and it's a mixture of things. I'd say first off, there's the blatant and obvious nature of politicians, being that they are overt liars and manipulators, and they're extremely deceiving. So it's clear that, and this is historically traceable, the fact that they come out and say things or promise things that they can't actually follow up on or keep. So he could possibly just be saying this to get people's attention, but at the same time, there's this idea of how nonchalant and cavalier he is. No more blackouts or shutdowns, ridiculous forest fires. What is that saying? It's almost saying that he knows all of this stuff is nonsense and all of it is controlled or being used politically or being used for social engineering. So there's those two possibilities. But I definitely think he does know. Anybody at that level, even though he lacks true or authentic power, he knows that, if you're in federal politics, you understand what social engineering is and its place or its role in politics. And I think what this also reminds me of, and I don't want to get off topic, but just Scripture teaches us the idea of the promising of peace and security. And more, I'm seeing this message being given from the right, being given from the conservative right and in the Republican Party, as if they are in a sense the savior or the cure to the psychotic and demonic left. And for me, that's just an obvious Hegelian dialectic being propped up. And though it does seem promising to some, I think it's actually just a further trap. And that's something that I try to explain in some of my recent work, is that as Christians, of course, we want to promote conservative views because conservative views align with Scripture. We do share some perspectives there, but we must not get conservatism confused with republicanism or federal politics in general. Conservatism as a worldview, or should I say, as a value system, I think stands on its own outside of politics. And when I speak of conservatism, that's what I'm referring to. I'm not at all referring to the Republican Party or the conservative right per se. But what we find here is that conservatism, the Christian ethic, is now being lumped into this white supremacist so-called conservative Republican right, neoconservatism as it is, obviously. But I think what we're really seeing is just another trick bag, another carrot on the stick for a lot of us Christians that want to be moved, or at least want to feel as if our system or our belief system is going to prevail in the form of the Republican Party. And though I do believe, say we do get another 4 years of Trump, there will be some positives there, but we're still on the same path. We're still being directed right towards Agenda 2021. Globalism isn't going anywhere. It's just going to be a different route, maybe a longer route. I'd say, if anything, this might buy us a little time as believers, right? A little more comfort per se. But this promising of peace and security, and I'm going to take all your pains away, it definitely reminds me of Scripture, and we understand what comes following that. So we could be being set up here for something major.
I totally agree. And since we spoke last time, and since all this has happened since last time, I've been scratching my head trying to figure out what's the move here. What is the move? First of all, every protocol that people have been having to live under was thrown out the window for the president. But I mean, I guess I get it. If you're really the president, they make certain considerations. But one of my subscribers sent me this, and I'm going to show you this and see if this makes sense. And I'm going to show you the associated article that goes with it. Now, I don't know if this is showing up properly. Let me double check. I think it is. It is. All right. I'm going to read this because it might be too small. Stand by. Let me try to make this bigger. Okay. This is from a subscriber whose name is Mickey. I took her email out. It said, okay, you were right about the red flag of this drug Trump was given. Here is an article saying what it is. And I'm going to show you the article after this. If COVID hasn't been isolated, which it hasn't, how would they use synthetic and parts of the COVID virus to make this antibody drug? That's a phenomenal question. And I just got this email like an hour ago. So we're going to ponder this at the same time. Second, no way they would give this to the president. I totally agree. She calls BS. I bet the whole thing is to get the people to demand this new quote unquote drug. I say it's to be given to it says, the article that I'm going to show you says it's to be given to mild to moderate symptoms. Why would you need a drug for a mild or moderate cold? And then she poses this question. Is this the CRISPR technology or hydrogel nanotech in this now? It's an IV drug going straight into the bloodstream, which is probably even better and faster than the shot in the arm. They want to give it to all the people that just test positive. Now, I've shown, I don't know how many bazillion articles that show that the tests are complete bunk. They're complete nonsense. They're not accurate whatsoever at all. And since we spoke last, a literal cavalcade of doctors, experts, and epidemiologists have come out. And they're trying to make some noise, like big time, that, hey, this is completely wrong. This has gone too far. This isn't real. This is the Stanford Daily, and it's talking about the experimental drug given to him. It says they're conducting an inpatient, outpatient clinical trials of Regeneron CoV2, an experimental antibody cocktail administered to President Donald Trump. Do you want me to read all this, or do you got something to say now?
I definitely have something to say about this.
Right.
This is we're in a very, very interesting situation here, and I think what makes it so fascinating is that we're dealing with a time and we're within an era where I'm gonna get to some basics here. The simple foundation of knowledge know-how, or the idea of knowing. The simple foundation of these things has been completely fractured and destabilized on a I'd say global, but we could just say on a national scale, since we're Americans. And what I mean by that is the general population has difficulty uh, solving problems, very simple problems. They have a difficulty understanding how things work. They've become reliant on mainstream media to give them their own perspectives. They've become reliant on different forms of technology just to supplement their own natural uh, um, their 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 own natural abilities. Our own thinking faculties have now been, in a sense and in many ways, taken over by forms of technology. Memory, for instance, our memory has been supplemented by different forms of technology. So what I'm getting at is, and I mentioned this in my most recent video, and I think this is very important for us to get just a clear understanding of why this is happening, because they've successfully rendered the population not only sub-tech, but I'd say subpar as far as authentic thinkers, and we're no longer able to think for ourselves on a grand scale. And with it, and in a situation like this, it's very easy to get illogical, irrational, uh, confusing things over on the population. And what they've done is they've been able to roll out this platform, this campaign of this COVID campaign. They've been able to roll it out so successfully because the majority of people cannot pick up on the problematic factors. They cannot pick up on the inconsistencies. And of course, we've discussed this before: the fear component, the ego component. There's all of these different aspects piled on together that creates this disconnect between people and reality. And I think the general population is disconnected and detached from what is actually going on in the material world. And we're not just living in virtual worlds, but we're actually living in these weird subjective psychological worlds based on concepts and symbols. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but basically the general population doesn't know how to think. And so what we have now is a ripe opportunity to get over complete nonsense on the population. And that's what this whole thing has been successful at doing. Now, what I want to also add is I think this is truly at its root part of ending the idea and even the concept or right of bodily autonomy or biological autonomy, meaning your own rights to your own body. And I made this clear in my most recent post that this is about getting a hold of your biological system, getting a hold of your biological data. And in order to do this, they have to create situations that gives them access to you, access to your blood, access to your DNA, access to your genetic code. And at the end of the day, this is pretty much about transhumanism, right? This is about the mark of the beast. This is about connecting you to the Internet of Things, the global digital grid, all of these ideas, Skynet, everything we've been discussing for a long time now. And that's what's fascinating about this. It's okay that COVID is completely confusing. It's okay that none of this makes sense, because all they have to do is create an opportunity of doubt, of fear, and potential or possibilities that things might work or might be true. And people are so at a loss for understanding and intelligence that just holding on to hope and possibilities or potentials is enough for them to buy in completely and acquiesce to whatever they're asked to. And we're being asked to give access to our bodies and our children and our minds and ultimately our spirits. And so what we're going to find here is that really they just want they want access to you. So they want to be able to put drugs on you. They want to be able to inject different things into your body. So really that's the goal in my view. And whether it's vaccines, whether it's drugs, it could be a multitude of things, and it will be. It's not going to be just one thing. Of course, it's going to all lead to the mark, but it's going to be a multitude of different forms of access to your bloodstream.
And to make things even worse, once people do acquiesce and allow them to do this, because I just had a post up from, I can't find him right now. I should have saved that. My bad. A guy from Colorado Springs. He said they're doing testing in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it's backed up 2 blocks. People are dying to get this thing. Once they take the test, they're going to take the vaccine. Once this biotech is inside you. Now they can literally enforce the patent that they have on it, that it's because it's going to, they developed this because the microchip, the RFID chip could never do what this stuff is going to do. It's going to assimilate. It's going to, they've got it to the point where your body will accept it. It will grow inside you just like anything else. And once it does, it's patentable. They now own you. I mean, it's bad enough they trade people's social security numbers on the stock market and have for the longest time. We are collateral, Goyim. They want to patent it. I mean, this is insane, dude. And people are literally, I think it's gone on so long. I mean, it's just my opinion. This has gone on so long that people just want anything to go back to normal, and they don't seem to catch the signs that the elites are telling them it's never going back to normal. It's the new normal. California is literally putting out information saying, if you go to a restaurant, put your mask on. When you take a bite and then put your mask back on. That is absolutely ridiculous, because right on the side of the boxes of every facial protection mask you can buy, it says does not prevent or help against COVID or anything. And people just discount that like it's not there. It's amazing to me how they're following the leader right over the cliff, sheep to the slaughter. It's amazing, brother.
It is, and it's extremely traumatic, all of these types of things. I saw that as well, what you have just mentioned, and that this is a form of trauma. It's a form of abuse. I mean, a really good example is prison or different forms of military training that do require a type of I'd say aggressive conditioning method, where you're or hot and cold, right? Push and pull. This whole idea of switching positions that they have a very strong contradictory nature. You know, you put someone in hot water and then you put them in cold water. I mean, this shocks the body, and it changes the system, and it's a form of trauma, and that's really what we're dealing with here. You know, we're really being beaten down, picked up, thrown back down, picked back up, and it's interesting how all of this is panning out. And also recently, I think it was the World Health Organization has come out and said, confirms that COVID is no more dangerous than the flu.
Right.
Now, what's interesting about this is, first off, it's something we've been saying pretty much since the beginning.
Time. Yep.
And it is also something, and one of the first things that Trump said, right? So what you're going to consistently find here is that a lot of truth will be coming out of Trump's mouth. A lot of truth will be coming out of the conservative right. It's this very strange, and I would say strategic way of creating confusion or hiding truth in plain sight. And also I discuss in my work how they're trying to cancel out truth by including it with nonsense, similar to what some would say about Alex Jones. He'll say a lot of truth, but then he'll say a lot of BS as well. So the truth ends up getting clouded by the BS. And that's kind of what we find here right now. And it's very successful. Let's just put it that way. But ultimately, I think this is about confusion, right? It's really about providing confusion. Also, another example is it's Orwell's 1984. If you remember, the whole 2 + 2 = 5 thing. And this is the idea of cognitive dissonance. So what you get here is where you know very well 2 + 2 = 4. But you're put in a position where you're forced and coerced to say it equals 5. So you're forced to hold two different beliefs, two opposing or contradictory beliefs at once. This is the definition of cognitive dissonance. And in that book, what we notice is that when you do this to an individual, you destabilize their ability to make decisions for themselves, as well as perceive reality for what it truly is, to the point that they become insecure, and not only in themselves, but in their own mind, in their own thoughts. So at that point, they become codependent on some external system or process to get their understanding or to give them their thoughts. So they look for something to give them their own way of thinking. And that's what's happening with this COVID. We're being forced to hold two different perspectives that contradict each other at once, such that we become completely confused and don't know who to believe or what to believe, because we no longer can even believe our own form of reasoning, because we can't reason out complete non-reason. which is what we're dealing with here. So we're being put in the position where at one point they're telling you people are dying. 2 million people have been infected. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are dying. We're getting videos of women crying in medical facilities talking about, I've seen so many people die. And we're getting this whole traumatic thing. But then on the other hand, at the same time, we're getting the World Health Organization coming out saying it's no worse than the flu. So these are two contradictory views here. One is saying, it's not a big deal. This kind of thing happens every day. The other view is people are dying. This is crazy. You can possibly die. Your family's going to die. We need to save America, or we need to save humanity. So these are two contradictory views that we're being forced to hold at the same time, which creates a type of trauma, mental trauma. So imagine if everyone's taking on this cognitive dissonance. What is that producing? That's producing a field of ignorant mice that are looking for a path to be led down, and we're being led. And again, back to the flu. Remember, as I've said before, at least in my view, if they could just get us to all accept a flu vaccine, everybody, they could implement all of their quote unquote science, all their nanotechnology through a flu vaccine. So really, what if they just propped all of this up just to really bring it down to, everyone get the flu vaccine, but it's going to be a new type of flu vaccine. It's going to be a new improved flu vaccine, which is going to lead right to the hydrogel, right to all these things that we've been discussing. Just an idea. But isn't it interesting how this seems to always circle back to the flu?
Indeed. And I know your theory on that from the last live stream that we had. But here's something I want to hit on real quick. I've already seen a few comments in here where they're saying, but Trump isn't pushing the vaccine. Don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. This entire, what was it, a 5-day odyssey where suddenly he's sick and his oxygen levels are dropping and the president's gasping for air, and then suddenly he's being photographed. Again, let's go back to the fact that no pictures, no public relations, no words are spoken from a president of the United States that aren't approved ahead of time, written ahead of time, and scripted. It's all scripted. They've shown this to us a million times. Trump going into the hospital and then coming out with some remedy that no one's ever heard of, that's completely and totally experimental, wouldn't happen. And that's not just my opinion. I actually had an MD on the night before last, and I posed the same question to her, and she said, it's all just theater. There's nothing there. There's nothing real there. So that was just something to completely get everybody thinking, get everybody coming up with theories. Like you were saying in the last live stream, when they put him in the hospital, everybody was suddenly a conspiracy theorist with their own conspiracy theory, and he came out with something completely different. Everybody talking about all these different, take this, take that, it's nothing. COVID-19 is nothing. The CDs, you're talking about fracturing the personality, confusing people, cognitive dissonance, MK Ultra. That's what this is. Because I'm holding up an article where Dr. Anthony Fauci is saying 400,000 will die in the United States by December 1st. Well, he can't say that because he has nothing to base that on, but he said it. So he's claiming in the next 2 months, as many people are going to die in the next 2 months that have in the entire time since this event has been going on. And then you simply go over to the CDC and look up the mortality rates, and they're 0.00027, depending on your age. But when you get over 70, that's when it becomes a 0.5% of a mortality rate. It's nothing. You have a better chance of falling out the window of your house while you're sitting in a chair as you do of dying of COVID. So people saying that Trump's not pushing the vaccine, you don't know what Trump's doing because Trump doesn't know what he's doing because they haven't told him yet. He's not to that portion of the script as of yet, in my opinion.
And you're correct there. I think let's just let's just create an idea that Trump wants to do good. Do you think he's really going to be able to follow through on what he wants? I doubt that. That's just not. It's never happened at any point in history, and I don't think it's going to happen now. He's definitely controlled, just like any other presidential figure would be. And again, this goes right back to this idea of knowledge and how we collect knowledge, how we engage with it, information. What do they call this? The information age, right? There's the
Yeah.
info war. So what this is about a war on information to destabilize your ability to understand what information is actually saying. But what this is also speaking to, and this is another important point here, we are living in an era of scientism. We are living in an era of the new technocracy where scientists and experts and technicians control everything. They become the end all to whatever the questions may be, right?
Well, let me
Whatever
jump in.
the
Let me jump in because I will
please.
forget this. When we first started, you and I, there was I did a whole ton of live streams when this first started happening because there was no censorship, because they were still gathering data to see what we thought and what we were thinking and what people were commenting and which way to go with this. Back before this got really bad, I had you on pretty much at the same time Neil deGrasse Tyson was on television saying, this is all an experiment. If everybody does what the scientists tell them, COVID might just pass and it might just go away. That's when you introduced everybody to the definition of a panopticon, where it would just be faceless, nameless, white jacketed experts dictating everything. And that's where we're at right now. Since you said that, they have we are getting experts want to put magic mushrooms in the drinking water so everyone's tripping so they'll lock down better. Experts want you to do this. Experts want you to do that. We're starting. It's everything's. This is all coming together as we pretty much thought it was going to come together, because it's an amalgamation of Brave New World, 1984. It's
Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit 451. They Live, and Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Things that we've been reading for years. It's all happening step by step by step by step. This is it. I mean, there's no Donald Trump can't be the president because the country is a corporation and has been for over 100 years, which is why the Federal Reserve never got audited ever. It's a private entity, just like the CDC. A private corporation is dictating what everyone on earth does through political people and through, through the big box stores, Amazon, etc. I can't think of the word right now. How ridiculous is that?
Richie, you are really nailing it here. This is what you're doing here, and this is what needs to be done by everybody to get a real understanding of this. You are taking the eagle eye view here, and you're scoping out the entire forest, and you're not getting stuck within the trees and all of the nonsense going on. The ground level, what we would call politics. You're seeing the force, and what you're demonstrating here is that one has to understand the development of all of these things historically, not just politically, but historically, and also I would say culturally. And what you've described here is that there's been this ongoing plan for generations to fulfill these different things, which also, and I would say ultimately, align with Scripture. One world order, the mark of the beast. All of these things are leading towards there. How quick? That's not the question we plan to ask, but it's about knowing the trajectory, knowing the developing stages, and seeing the patterns. And what you've just outlined here is that we are moving perfectly lockstep right where this is supposed to go. So for someone to believe that Trump is going to come do something, or there's going to be, you haven't been paying attention. You haven't been paying attention to what all of these people have been writing for generations, what Scripture tells us, and what we've been seeing with our very own eyes. Okay, it's very clear that we are moving towards the one world government. We are moving towards the type of mark of the beast, and it is being done through technocracy. It is being done through the establishing scientific elite that go right back to Francis Bacon when he first discussed. He was the first one to actually produce this idea. He was even the first person to take governmental funds and fund scientific research. Now, of course, he had different things in mind. He wasn't necessarily like these experts we'd see today. I'd say he was a little bit more honest in his pursuit, but his methods, his ideas have been completely manipulated and turned into what we're seeing today. Um, and of course, the Royal Society. You want to know how all of this really worked out? Do a little research on the Royal Society. It'll give you an understanding how we got where we're at. And basically, this is the technocracy where everything is controlled by so-called experts. In psychology, they use the term the white coat or the white lab coat effect, where when people see a white lab coat, they immediately trust, they immediately believe what they're being told. There's this aura of truth that is then applied to whoever is wearing that white lab coat, and we see this all the time. And we're getting that same effect with the idea of expert. This is being transferred into the term expert now. So if you see where they use the term expert in journalism, it's really just a type of signaling. It's a type of anchoring to anchor your trust in whatever they're saying because they've put the word expert in there. And so that's really what we're dealing with. And I want to take this idea and move forward to what I was going to say earlier about this idea of knowledge and how we collect knowledge and how we believe knowledge, also known as epistemology, which really just means how you know what you know, the way you know what you know. Well, our epistemology has changed. Prior, our epistemology would be a mixture of scripture, right? God's natural law with the scientific method, right? And just
Days, I got to interrupt you. Someone just
sure.
said that my ego went through the roof. Well, let me rebolster my ego. That word you just said, I have no idea what that means. Say that again.
Epistemology. It's really just to keep it simple. It's how you know what you know. It's basically where do you get your knowledge from,
I got
right?
you. I got you.
Right. So our epistemology, the way we would know what we know in the modern age, was usually a mixture of God's law, natural law, scripture, mixed with the scientific method. That's how we would come to truths. Usually, the scripture or the Bible or God's law would be our moral foundation to make decisions, but our ability to know what is true would usually be done through the scientific method. We would use the scientific method to know what is and what isn't, and we would use God's law or scripture, God's moral Christian ethic, to know what should be done and what should not be done. That's how you have a stable society. When you have those two areas, you have the what can be and what cannot be based on testing through the scientific method, and also we have the should and should not, so we can know what to actually do with our technology. See, we've gotten rid of God, so now we just know the what I can do and what I can't do. And so when we find out what we can do, we just run with it because we have no what psychology would call super ego, or what Christian would call, we have no moral grounding to tell us what's right and what's wrong. So what we've turned into is this system, this culture, this society or nation of a scientistic. And when I say scientistic, I'm basing that on scientism, meaning we do everything through science only, and nothing can tell us anything outside of what science tells us. But the problem is we're not really using science anymore. Now our science is politically based. And what I mean by that is we're now doing what the stakeholders want us to do. We're now doing what the think tanks want us to pursue. We're doing what the NGOs want us to pursue. That's what Agenda 21 is all about. It's all about a specific scientific faction of, I'd call them psychopaths, that are making the decisions for humanity. Now, this idea of knowledge, what we've discovered is, what is everything being laid out by? Is it being laid out by the scientific method, observation, experimentation, replication? No, it's being laid out through models. This is the point. I said all of that to get to this idea of models. Everything is being done through models. Models are just projections. They're potentialities. They're not truths. Isn't it interesting that this entire COVID thing has been based on models that have always, and I'd say consistently, been wrong? But we continue to believe them and we continue to trust them. Why? Because they have the white coats, because they're the experts. And this is the interesting part. If they can provide us the room for potential, the room for doubt, we don't have to know the truth. Just that little bit of room of doubt, we'll keep trusting their models. We'll keep trusting them. I'm saying all this to get to this point. The future is about models, Richie. The future is about this technocratic version of reality, which is based on the machine. What are algorithms? Algorithms are different forms of models. Everything is going to work through models and algorithmic technology moving forward. We are just beginning the stages of this. And this is the way they are conditioning society, conditioning all the people here to prepare themselves and get used to working through models, living by models, being governed by models, no longer dealing with truth, no longer really engaging with the scientific method, and of course, completely absent of moral ethics and moral codes that would have been rooted in the Christian worldview. They get rid of Christianity, get rid of the morals, get rid of the ethics, even get rid of the scientific method. That's why we're seeing the Enlightenment era being pushed out of the door in academia right now. But just focus on our models. Let's just focus on our AI, our artificial intelligence, our machine learning, which it's not intelligent at all. It's just machine learning. We're going to let these machine learning capabilities guide you. Just trust us. That's what this is. It's about models. And that's the disturbing part. None of this is based in reality, man. All of this is based in some potential future with a question mark on it. And we're putting our lives in the hands of that system.
Somebody just brought up the fact that scientists, I can't even remember, scientists or doctors are snake oil salesmen. Well, the interesting thing about that statement is if you go back to James Corbett's 2 documentaries that if you consider yourself awake, you need to watch these if you haven't. How Big Oil Conquered the World, and then Why Big Oil Conquered the World. It literally did start out with one of the Rockefellers, Devil Bill, selling people oil as the cure for cancer or for the cure for leukemia or for whatever ails you. And then years later, when he finally, I think he changed his name again because he was accused of raping an underage girl because he was a good guy, like all of them are. These guys literally gave money to every institute and college of any value, and then got their people on the as chairman on the board of directors, etc., and literally changed medicine. They changed schooling, and it's all showing right now. It's the same people pulling this again. They've been doing this for a long, long, long time. I was just posing the question to somebody. The point where we're at right now with technology, there had to have been a point where these guys were at this point before. This can't be the first time we've had this kind of technology. And then I referred back to the Kythera mechanism. I've done video after video on that over the years. They find, it's 1,000 years old. It's 3,000 years old. The Greeks used to use it for, the stars or whatever. They always give you some ridiculous answer. But I have a funny feeling that we've been in this same position before, but history did not record it, or it's just kept secret from us.
Very good point.
Well, I'm just saying, how do you build a Large Hadron Collider correctly the first time if it's never been done before? How are they building a neutron star directly down the road from CERN that is literally using plasma held in place with electromagnets to create a neutron star on Earth? What if the power goes out and that plasma hits the walls? It's absolute destruction. How do you build these things that have never been done before ever the first time correctly if somebody isn't guiding you or you're not falling back on old information that we don't know about? I just find it amazing that they've coordinated this so well that 2020, it pops off. Agenda 21 is the next year to come, and then it's on. And it's startling to me that they've done this. And like I said, 400,000 will die. And then you just hold up today's CDCs. It's all right there. They've never taken it down. The mortality rate is less than if I fell out of this chair right now and a kitten attacked me to death. I have more of a chance of dying than of CV-19.
It's 2 + 2 = 5. Reified.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's not just Days quoting from a book. They did test back like this. True Stream Media did a video on this, a really long one, that showed them testing people in a room. 5 people were paid actors, like the government, and 1 person was an actual, subject. They kept giving the wrong answer, and then the 5th guy started giving the wrong answer, even though he knew it was wrong because everybody else was. And that's a real thing. They've tested that stuff ad nauseum to see how people would react. And if put in the position where everyone else is giving the wrong answer and you look like the odd man out, you'll start giving the wrong answer. I don't suffer from that. I'd keep giving the right answer till the wheels fall off. I'm just that dumb.
It really takes as little as 3 individuals, I think. Once the number reaches 3 people, that type of behavior starts to occur where people will start copying, they will start mimicking, and they will start questioning their own perspective based on the other two's behavior. Another good example is the elevator demonstration where everyone, this was an old candid camera, I think, episode, but it's just a good example of this where
Yep.
a guy enters an elevator and everyone's turned the opposite direction. I think there might be about 4 or 5 people in there, and he just slowly turns, and mimics, mirrors the people around him. It's human behavior. This is a great example of them co-opting our nature and literally dealing with the psychological mechanisms of the human being to control. This speaks directly to cybernetics. If anyone's interested in the history of cybernetics, I'd look into Norbert Weiner, who's the father of cybernetics, and this is all he studied: the idea of the human being a machine, being the brain being like a computer. And there's truths to that, but he's aware. He's not completely ignorant to the fact that he leaves out the whole consciousness and spiritual aspect of the human being. He does address it, but he just doesn't focus on it. That's why his work is, I'd say, very limited, in that he pretty much compares humans to a machine. We're much more than a machine. There's many things the machine can't do that humans can. The essence of humans, the idea of being able to hold different perspectives, the ability to see one's own self as a self, the idea of consciousness, or the idea of an identity. Machines can't, they cannot replicate this type of human essence, which is part of my understanding, that machines will never be human like. They will never be able to upload true consciousness. There will only be machine learning. And I've read enough in the area of study to know, by the experts' own words, they don't come out too often and say it, but there's no way there will ever be an artificial intelligence or a human being like machine. It's because we are made in God's image. We are made by the Creator, and everything else is a carbon copy. Not even I wouldn't even say a carbon copy, but a subpar copy made by the hands of Satan. He that controls the earth.
I agree. And if you recall, years ago, I don't know how long you've been following the channel, but years ago, Anthony Patch was my co-host or whatever. And Anthony was very well versed on CERN, still is. We basically whittled it down to what they're calling quantum computers. Artificial intelligence is basically a machine that allows them to do a ritual. And instead of having to burn candles, put down salt, cut a baby's throat, cut an animal's throat or whatever, this machine does it for them, allowing them to actually talk to fallen entities, like a Ouija board that's on 24/7.
Mm.
And that's all the AI is literally demonic interference, demonic entities, fallen angels under the guise of an AI system. If it even exists. It's really hard to tell, because every piece of information, that's why I kind of steered away from CERN, because nothing really ever seemed to happen.
Yeah.
My biggest thought was CERN was a weapon that they were trying to use to tear the veil around us and start everything off in the Bible prematurely. And it seems that they haven't, or they have, but there's no way to prove it whatsoever at all.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah, I do.
And people have fallen for technology so much. And here's another thing. I'm working on my truck one day. I wired something wrong and I blew up a transformer. Now I couldn't get one. So I started taking it apart. This little computer circuit. I'm trying to fix it like I know what I'm doing. Well, I take it apart. At the same time I'm sitting there looking at this, I get an email from Melissa from TrueStream Media. And it's a list of sigils that you would use to contact demonic entities. And I'm sitting there looking at it going, wow, this is creepy. But then I start looking at it. And if you take those sigils and compare them to an electrical blueprint, all the symbolism, all the sigils, everything, including the power button, the button everyone presses, powers and principalities, they're all the same. And the power button is actually the layout of the UN's conference room. If you look at it from above, it's literally a half circle with the slit in the middle. Everyone hits the power and principalities button.
Wow.
Lucifer fell from heaven like lightning, electricity. It's all combined somehow. And it does give them the ability, using technology and these scrying mirrors, to cast spells. And I think the only people that are immune to it are the people that are aware that we weren't rocks that rained. we were rocks, and then it rained, and we turned into mud, and then eventually some of us decided to be people, some decided to be giraffes, some decided to be mosquitoes, and some decided to be Bill Gates. I don't believe that whatsoever
Yeah.
at all. If you go out in nature and look at how things are laid out, look at a sunflower. The Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio is incorporated into everything. And back in the old days, scientists used to call that the fingerprint of God. But then the mass media was bought up with the same elites that we're dealing with right now, and all that went away. So I don't even know if that was even on the right line. I just had to say that. So there's that.
No, those are very good points. And I think there is clearly a pattern here. There's a connection here. I think a lot of, we could just look at the historical sources for technology. I mean, even look at computer engineering, look at some of the early computer programming. It's clearly a lot of satanic symbology used there. So now this isn't to demonize computers or technology per se, but there clearly is a type of supernatural component when thinking about energy and just computer technology in general. It's way beyond my knowledge, way beyond my understanding even, but it's extremely fascinating. But I think really the only way to be safe in a world that is ran by the Prince of Darkness is, of course, to be under the Most High God through Christ and living in the Holy Spirit. And I think that is our purpose here. And we are on earth. We are in the flesh, and we understand what God speaks of when he brings up the flesh or the world. We aren't to love it and fall victim to it. So it's a battle, man. It's at the end of the day, it's a good versus evil battle that we are all stuck in here. But what we're seeing is, although his time is running out, Satan is really ramping things up, man. And he is using all of his weapons, and it's appearing to be successful right now.
I agree. And speaking of all technology, large corporations, everyone using some sort of a pyramid or some sort of a demonic symbolism, the operating system at the very, 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 very backbone of every computer, etc., is called a daemon. A DAEMON. Wyoming has more flies than I've ever seen in my life. Every time I'm doing a live, one just landed on my nose like Barack Obama when everyone thought he was dead. Unbelievable. All right, Days, I know the time is short for you today-ish, so I still got a lot to go through here. Let me show you.
Let's keep rolling.
Oh, no, we're rolling, brother. We're rolling. It's all good, man. But have you seen this? The Great Barrington Declaration. It's as infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. And as of right this moment, it's been signed by almost 5,000 medical and health scientists, almost 10,000 medical practitioners, and only 128,000 of the general public, because apparently they haven't seen it as of yet. But this isn't going to stem the flow, but I'm psyched to see it, and I'm going to help promote it for what it's worth. It's not the only one. We've also got lots of stories popping up where this happened at the very beginning and didn't seem to slow anything down one single bit. But we've got another 10 experts questioning the coronavirus pandemic. And these are all heavy hitters. These are all doctors. These are all epidemiologists and experts in their particular fields. And like I said, I did a couple of videos on this when this whole thing first started, because we had stories exactly like this, with the experts calling this NG, but they're basically talking about the policies, and not enough of them will come down to the brass tacks of the 0.000. They're just saying the lockdowns, they still want to see herd immunity. And in the time that COVID's broke, I've learned that herd immunity and all that stuff isn't even accurate. None of it's even accurate. But it's good to see that this is happening. You got anything to say on that? Because there's a lot of them, brother.
Yes, there is. This is increasing. I've been paying attention to this, and I think it's just a natural reaction from people who actually use their brains and people who aren't necessarily fully enthralled by what media sells society, and that actually do have problem-solving capacity. And I think this is a natural reaction. And I think what we're seeing is an authentic and I would argue organic movement here. And of course, there's an aspect of controlled opposition everywhere. But
everywhere.
I think there's also always going to be an organic and authentic movement too, because there is always that spliced aspect of reality that's going to show itself. And I think that's what we're seeing. People are just like us, waking up and coming out and forming little movements. And I think it's great. I don't think it's going to have a big enough influence as we would like, but I think it does play its role in this. And I'm happy to see it. I hope it increases. I
Hey,
really have
check
no
this
idea
out.
what part it's going to play, but it's very
Check
interesting.
this out. The sirens that were installed after 9/11 here are going off outside. I've never heard this before. This is kind of freaking me out a little bit. I don't know if you can hear this.
I do.
What the F? Dogs are howling. If it's an issue, I'm sure Mike will come in and he'll give you the proper information.
Interesting.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'd never heard this before.
No, totally. I get it, man. Interesting times. So many strange
you gotta
things
look.
are popping up right now, man.
Right? You got to love the fact that after 9/11, that was bad enough as far as MK Ultra fracturing, scaring people. But in small towns, they installed these enormous things so they can scare you on a regular basis. And some of them even sound like the exact whistle or alarm from the movie The Purge, which is helpful. So that's nice of them.
Interesting.
Yeah. You got to love it. You got to
It's
love
like
it.
like a triggering mechanism. You know, it
Yeah.
reminds me of what they did in Hawaii. Remember they sent all of those
Yes.
false texts?
Yes.
That whole thing was a massive psyop, man.
That was horrible because I have subscribers in Hawaii that were sending it. And I'm like, is this legit? Is this real? All right. So I just showed you a couple of, I'm going to show you a few more, but there's a couple stories that have popped up recently of people with the correct credentials pushing back against this. And as soon as we see that, then Market Watch puts out things like this. Prepare for 2 years of wearing a mask. So let me pose this to you because I know you to be an intelligent man. I'm just gonna say this as stupidly as I can, which means I'll just say it normally because I'm so egotistical. If this is a natural, unprecedented, never seen before pandemic, and it's here to cleanse the land, how can you predict that you're going to need a mask for 2 years? What model are you basing that on? Because we don't have a previous model to base it on. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
How can you possibly come up? And I'm talking, let's pretend that this is all, as they say and so forth and so on. How can they make predictions like this?
Well, I would say it's very easy when you think about the audience they're trying to reach.
Okay.
So they're assuming the audience that is reading this information is already taken by this. They are part of that population that is completely bought in, that is completely stuck within the matrix. They're not assuming people reading this are actually going to be seeing things for what they truly are. And that's what's interesting about reading mainstream media is you're just blown away by how silly and ignorant and illogical so many of these stories are. So childish, even as if we're little children. And it's because they are reaching a specific audience. And unfortunately for us, the majority of people, which I constantly mention in my work, the majority of people are part of this mass population of useless eaters that just believe everything they're given because they've been systematically rendered such. And it's very frustrating, man. But I'm going to tell you, they know who they're dealing with. They're dealing with a crowd of robots, in a sense, man. Artificial intelligence.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong because I agree. Because I used to think it was insane. Ever since I've had a cell phone, I used to carry it in my side pocket when I was a kid. And when my leg would start vibrating as though my phone were ringing, yet my phone wasn't in my pocket, I started to think something was fishy. So I read the instructions and it started saying, don't ever keep your phone within, I think it was 9 to 12 inches from you, etc. I don't talk on the phone at all. If I do, it's on speaker, if ever. It's amazing to me that people that are wearing these masks, I mean, I understand that the instructions for the cell phone seem pretty lengthy. It's a pretty good sized piece of paper. There's a lot of words. It's small. But directly on the side of the face protection mask box, it clearly states, I mean, I don't know how many YouTube channels have shown this. This will not protect you from coronavirus and or COVID-19. And it's not in small letters. And that's pretty much all it says. And yet people still put it right on because the television tells them to. It's amazing. It's utterly amazing that myself, yourself, everyone in the chat, a bunch of other people, we're all the smartest people on earth right now, apparently, because we can see right through this. So there's that.
Also,
we are definitely the minority.
Oh, we are, man. Another interesting thing is you look at places like Sweden, where they don't have lockdowns. People aren't wearing masks. Recently, I saw a video of some guy walking around outside, and it was like a day in, anywhere in the United States 2 years ago. No one wearing masks, no one social distancing. And it's interesting. How is that possible? How are they able to experience that polar opposite situation over there in Sweden and in different parts of the Netherlands? How is it that they can live that way? And for one, not spread this so-called pandemic, not even have a real issue with it. And two, not create some precedent, that transfers over into, say, the United States. Hey, look at Sweden's doing fine. Well, what's interesting is that Sweden, and I think a lot of areas over there, are already pretty much plugged into the digital system. I think they're already fully in line with the technocratic grid and the idea of cashless. I believe they are cashless, actually, from what I've heard. So it's interesting to me to see this beat down that America is getting, Australia, UK, just beat down from this. And possibly it has a lot to do with the fact that, and this is just my own theory on it, that we are kind of the last remnant of the Western spirit of individuality. Now, I do understand the UK is much different than America. I mean, completely different when it comes to culture. I'd say America is probably the most stubborn, the most individualistic. We have the hardest heads. We are definitely one to fight for our ability to do whatever the hell we want. And I think that's why we are getting such a beat down, is because they literally have to beat that out of us so we could be prepared for this new system of servitude that it appears those in Sweden and those in those areas are already kind of prepared for, being that it is somewhat socialist, it's mixed economy, but as they're collectivists, let's put it that way. Collectivist societies are already prepared to be moved like cattle, opposed to areas like America, for instance, who are still very individualistic in many ways and aren't really down for all of this forced draconian order. Possibly that could have to do with all of these constant lies and abuse and confusion, because they literally have to render us silly and drunk so they could have their way with us, as it were.
It's funny that with all this stuff going on with different food items, like on the East Coast, white rice is difficult to come by right now, which is a strange thing, but it's one of the things. You go in the supermarket, you'll notice any place that there's places where stuff that you always got isn't there. They're slowing it down. We watch them spend quite a great deal of time destroying crops in the United States, massive crops, whether it was for human consumption or cattle consumption, it all trickles down. But the one thing you haven't heard anything about is the slowing down of drugs coming into the United States, illegal illicit drugs. Yeah. Those are completely COVID-free, good to go. Those pipelines are wide open. I just find it funny. I could be wrong. But
it's funny. I mean, did you look at the politics, man? This is the biggest giveaway. We're in the middle of a so-called pandemic, yet they're allowing thousands of people to be protesting all over the United States for racial issues. I mean, right. It's so ridiculously obvious that there is no threat of a pandemic if you're allowing people to take to the streets every single night screaming all of their germs out into the air. Right. I mean, it's just very, very obvious that there isn't this pending threat to the human safety and I guess the lives of of the people. I mean, if this was some crazy, even the guy that tased that girl recently, if she had some deadly disease, right? Do you think you're going to get near her? Even the potential of her having some deadly disease, are you going to wrestle her to the ground? Will you be putting your hands in palms and paws on people that could potentially give you a virus that could kill you in a matter of days? Think about it.
I agree. I've been banging the same drum since the beginning. It's amazing that COVID took time off to allow people to protest the various wrongs in the world that are being amplified by the media at the perfect time. The timing is just impeccable.
But this is what they've been successful at doing. Again, this goes right back to the 84 Orwellian concept. They've at the same time succeeded in getting you to believe that this disease is not only deadly, but it's also asymptomatic and practically harmless and as mild as a flu. They've gotten society to believe these two contradictory things at the same time. Fascinating.
It is fascinating because every single time one of the doomsayers from the White House comes out and says something, you can just simply refer to the source that they're referring to and see that it's a complete and utter lie. It's just astounding to me. And the beauty part is because of the cosmic battle between good and evil and Satan, God, I believe they have to leave this information up. So it's there if you want to look at it. But if you want to listen to the lies that are scary, that make it easier for them to control you, you can do that too. It's just amazing that people pick the easier route, the television. It's amazing. As many times as they've lied to us, I can't help but referring back to that video where, ladies and gentlemen, Turkey has just attacked Syria. Look at this unbelievable footage of them dropping bombs when it's actually gunfire and tracer bullets. They're dropping bombs and we're getting stories of atrocities happening. It wasn't real at all, yet it ran on all the mainstream for, I believe it was 24 hours. And it turned out it was a gun show in Kentucky. So not only did they lie about Turkey attacking our ally Syria, I guess Syria is our ally now, even though it doesn't look like it, they said there was atrocities. So they lied and then lied some more. You can't have atrocities coming from Syria when it's actually a gun show in Kentucky that happened, I believe, the year before. They did that right before Event 201, I'm sorry. And I believe that was the tipping point. That was their litmus test. If these people don't show up, if these people don't turn off their televisions, we got them. And they got them. Because the only people talking about how ridiculous it was claiming a country was attacking another country who was apparently an ally of ours when it wasn't. It was a small event in a field in Kentucky, of all places. Nobody said shit. Nobody even knew about it. Nobody in my regular life even knew that was a thing. Once I think they got away with that, they said, run it. Event 201, we're live. And they were, and they are. So,
indeed.
And real quick, this one comment, the government would never lie.
I love that one.
I do too. I don't understand, or I don't remember when people went from don't trust the government to whatever they say, because this is amazing. They're telling you to stay in your house. They're telling you to dress a certain way. They're telling you how your children will be. The children are being treated exactly like prisoners. When you have to walk staggered, single line through the school, sit down. I mean, that's jail. That's what it's getting them ready for. That's really bad.
It is. I mean, especially this idea of while you're eating, take off your mask and then put it back on in between bites. I mean,
that's phenomenal.
I don't even go out enough to see that yet. But the moment I see that, oh, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to behold. Let's just put it that way. I mean, that's when you know we're reaching the end, guys.
Let me ask you here. All right. We talked about this before. You said they were going to try to create a bad guy. I'll tell you what. When I see somebody, I mean, Trump, the Trump getting COVID, that was a brilliant one, because even way out here in the West, I noticed after that event occurred, the amount of older men, with their suspenders, with their cowboy boots, their power wagon trucks, farmers, salt of the earth, real, actual Americans. These dudes were masked up because it worked. When I see somebody wearing a mask, I just want to laugh at them. And sometimes I do, but I feel anger towards them. And now they feel the same to me. It's a whole nother layer of division we never thought they could have got from a complete and total fairy tale, but it worked. The
Yes.
bad guy culture, I think you called it.
Yes, it's this, and there's this vigilante kind of response that you'll get where um, citizens become their own policemen, right? And then there's the self-policing, self-censorship. It just creates a divide, this interpersonal violence and conflict between us that just further divides it. It further creates an opportunity to divide and conquer. I mean, it's very basic art of war type of methods that they're using. And it's sad when you see good, honest, people suffering from this and buying in. And, I saw this one lady recently with 2 children, and it was just sad, man. Like, we were walking in this area, and there was these different what are they, Purell dispensers, and we were walking for quite a long while, and I watched her use different dispensers, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 times within this short walk. And these poor kids, she's just lathering them with Purell. They'll go about 50 yards and she'll lather them again. It's these poor kids, man, they're all masked up. It's like they're not living the experience of a human being. They're kind of living the experience of, I don't even know what, it's this it's a new thing. It's really sad to see.
When you see them being isolated and rubbed down with Purell and other products like that, it reminds me of when Neo comes out of the battery pod.
No.
And they pull it out like he's all completely, and it's just so insane that
that's a good one.
Refers back to a movie accurately that we saw. They were training us the entire time, man.
Yes.
Let me ask you, why is it that Americans won't stop and get pissed off at the powers that be, but they'll get mad at somebody for wearing a mask or not? Like, we'll fight each other over something that they're pulling on us when all of us should be looking at them. And trying to get everyone to turn their attention is mind-boggling. I've passed out. I drive around. I'm in my truck a lot. My truck has large stickers you can't miss that simply said, COVID is a hoax. Hashtag COVID is a hoax. It gets people talking. They're asking me. It took me a little bit, but then I figured out to put Dr. Kaufman, Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Madej, and then everybody reading the white papers, how the CDC was telling people, even if you suspect, check them off on our new list that they've got COVID. I put them all on flash drives. I got a whole bunch made, but I already ran out. I passed out 400 and almost 500 of them. I lost a couple. I don't know where they went. But I thought it was brilliant because I started making them on DVDs, and I'm like, dude, nobody has a DVD player. I simply downloaded videos, put them on a USB, and then sent them to a place, and they made me 500. They're sending me another 500 soon, I hope. Actually, UPS just came. He handed it to Mike. It might be them.
Nice.
But any way you can possibly spread the word, if you can spread the word with somebody with credentials explaining it, so much the better. I ran into that couple, the 80 and 90-year-old couple in Missouri that were printing up pages off the CDC. These people, I don't even know how long they spent printing it, but they had stacks of it. They had lists of YouTube channels to watch. They had lists with links to go here to find out the proof. They've been on this for months that I know of. Anything you can possibly do. And like I just said before we went live, I invited you out to Florida because apparently on the 25th in Leland, Florida of October, we've already got security, the permits, etc. We're going to have a conference and we're not charging anybody. This ain't about money, man. I'm going to drive from Wyoming to Florida. That's a long, long ride. And I already offered to handle it if you could make it, but you said you have a prior engagement for a couple of weeks, and I get it.
I do. But this is exactly what we need, though, honestly. And we need to have more of these types of things. And I think this is all we really have left is this type of activism, speaking up, getting the truth out. I think this is all we truly have left in these times, at least in the physical world.
The only problem is trying to organize with people, putting it out on YouTube, the number one most censored, monitored platform on social media, they have hit me on YouTube before I published the video. So the algorithm or whomever has already watched the video and found it offensive before I've even put the title, the tags. Mike's watched it happen. He's tried to back up one of my videos and it's happened to him. It's not even published. It's not even out there and it's already struck down. That's how heavily monitored this platform is. So for the last 5 years, there are, by now, I'd have to say tens of thousands of my subscribers that have met me face to face, and we've organized and we've done this and we've done that. And I was never stupid enough to put it out on YouTube so that somebody could lure me into or do any sort of infiltration. But now we just got to do what we got to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I've helped out a lot of people. I've met every serious group in the United States of America. I've given them first aid. I've given them whatever they need to do whatever they're trying to do and do it better or well or whatever. So there's that. I've done I did that bragging about it because all that does is get people making videos about you. He's doing something good because he's what? Exactly. He ain't spending it on dental work. You know what I mean?
You're always going to get that. Yeah.
Don't sleep. You know what I mean? I'm a 53-year-old dude sleeping on the top of my truck every night because I'd rather give the money away to someone that actually needs it. So,
well, you're doing the work, man, and that's
trying, what brother. And like I said, you're still invited. We're gonna have several doctors. We're gonna have a lot of good speakers. I'm gonna try to get Nicholson, James Corbett, and a couple of other local YouTubers that are out there that are in the, they're in the word and understand what's up and have something to offer. So.
Absolutely. That's huge, man. And you asked a question earlier that I wanted to respond to about how is it that people are so quick to attack their peers opposed to attacking the government? And it's a complex answer, but I think one very clear part has to do with the fact that it describes how individuals seek or desire power in a world where they feel powerless. So what I mean by that is, the average citizen today has been rendered machine-like. We really have, we feel at least that we have no real influence here, especially now with the way all of the control and regulations has panned out. Most people feel very desperate, and so what they do is they transfer that desperation and that frustration and that desire for power onto others by trying to overpower them. I think a good example of this is what you would see with a child that's bullied in home or abused in home, and they take that abuse and they pass it on to their peers and they bully their peers and they kind of replicate that behavior because in a sense they want to feel that power that the parent feels, right? They want to feel that power of being the one that has the strength or that one that has the control. So when you lack control, you seek to control others. And I think that's what we're seeing today in the general population. When you see these Karens and Kens, so-called, these are just people who feel utterly weak and who are in a sense or have been abused or are living very insecure lives and are very frustrated with their situations and frustrated with themselves, and they want to take them out and take those frustrations out on other people. And then you will find a lot of these individuals in positions of power. This is just how it works. A lot of security guards, even policemen, politicians, a lot of these people are those that seek and desire power because they inherently feel powerless. So I think we're just seeing another type of spell of this going on right now, and you see everybody virtue signaling and trying to prove that they're good people, and through these symbolic things like wearing masks and enforcing masks on other people, and then again some people do it because they have to. It has to do with their job description or whatever, and I understand those situations, but just those that are doing this out in the public, these people have issues. These people authentically have issues that are out here doing this stuff. They're extremely disturbed.
Well, what kind of person? I don't suffer from this, so I'm glad. There's a lot of things I'm definitely guilty of, but I don't suffer from wanting to be in charge of other people. I want to be a movie star or famous or anything to that nature. You know what I'm saying? I'm fairly certain my appearance proves that. Half the time when I do a video, my hair's pointing sideways like Kid and Play. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? To the people, the Barack Obamas, the Trumps, the people that want to be rich and powerful. If you were rich and powerful and you did something with it, I'm not talking the make-believe, veneered, candy-coated Bill Gates, Melinda Gates kind of fame where they were average person. They're so wonderful. They want to stick a needle in every child on earth to save them. You know what I mean? I'm talking people like at any time. We said this before, and you can say what you want. I'm not saying you, Days. At any time, Donald Trump could be the actual president for real. One time in history, he could stand at that mic, grab the mic, and it's live. It's live. This is a hoax. This entire thing is a hoax. Blah, 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 and whatever else. Right there and then, he would ignite the MAGA movement, all the Trump supporters, the cat's out of the bag. And like I said, he's a billionaire. If I had $1 billion or several $1 billion, you couldn't get near me because lots of scumbags have proven that over the years. These people are rulers and they've killed so many people and so many people would like to see them dead, but they can't get to them. Trump could do that, but he chooses not to because it's not his role. He has absolutely zero affection towards the American people. He's already shown who he's loyal to by giving Benjamin Netanyahu, the guy that became the prime minister of Israel, by killing the former guy. He killed him. You know what I'm saying? Trump hands him the keys to the White House. Trump shows you his Kabbalah tree, the tree of life sitting on his wall in his office. The design of Trump Tower is a Kabbalist sigil. He's not one of us. He never has been. Look at his family. Look at who is, for the love of God, what's it called? His son-in-law is the number one candidate for the Antichrist. What else do you got to say? You know what I mean? Make America great while we're going straight down in flames while wearing masks and socially distancing, but straight down in flames nonetheless. It's amazing that people still buy this dude. But people like this want power. And whenever they get it, they never do anything good with it, ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just speaks to the whole issue of power and the issue of the flesh and how how power and the flesh tend to be counterproductive. And, you know, with power, of course, comes great responsibility, but also power corrupts always. These are contradictory things. You know, how can you do good things with power when you can be corrupted by it? So this just pretty much describes what we're seeing in the danger of power, especially power given to man, a type of encompassing power, a type of almost godlike power. And we do see how they call Trump the God King, interestingly. So I would definitely say in any situation of all powerful positions, you're going to have this arrangement where mankind will be let down. And this is ultimately, as you said, it's not his role. And I would add to that by saying it's not part of the plan. And I'm not referring to some silly Q plan. I'm referring to the Most High God's plan.
And you've mentioned before, which was brilliant and fairly self-evident, but still brilliant nonetheless. One person in government, president or not, can't change the trajectory of the country whatsoever at all. But he could slow this down if he wanted to. He could throw a real onion in the ointment or a wrench in the works if he chose to, but he won't. He plays along like he's told to. We said he was going to get taken out of the picture one way or the other, and that still ain't over.
The window's open.
They pulled him right out, and then it just opened up all sorts of questions. It stopped everything that was quote unquote mainstream important in its tracks because Trump, and it's funny because you and I posed the question, what if Obama pops up again? As soon as Trump gets diagnosed, and his wife, with this deadly disease, as the doctor called it, even though it's not a disease, it's a virus, and doctors should know that. But as soon as that happens, the first video that pops up is ex-President Barack Hussein Obama in a 39-second video, giving his condolences and say, it's politics is politics or whatever he said. I just found that really strange. We were just talking it and pretty much everything just happened right there and then. So it was odd.
The whole thing is odd, and the whole thing is getting more and more creepy. And I will continue to use that word because it just seems to fit perfectly. This is like some type of weird Twilight Zone episode that we are all experiencing together.
Okay,
I
so
really don't know what to say.
it's hard to say. All we can do is look at it and wonder aloud and keep hope.
Yes,
So
yes.
for everyone that keeps asking about DeLand, Florida, I'll give you, as soon as I have everything lined up, I'll let you know, and you'll hear it from other YouTubers and such, I'm sure. Now, the dude that I just put in time up because you decided to post that there's a flat earth conference the day before the conference where the doctors will be trying to stop this thing. Believe it or not, the shape of the earth is going to have to take a backseat to the Agenda 21 rocket ship that we're on right now. I'm sorry. I'm just saying that. So just so you know, and Nibiru can't come because it doesn't work like that.
Real quick, I want to add before we wrap
Have
up
at it.
here.
Take it.
I,
Do
I
what you
just
want.
I want to put this out. I want to make sure this is clear because we didn't get to finish this topic. This idea of the general population or the many people out there who can't seem to come to the understandings that you or we might, or the audience. I think a lot of it has to do with, of course, all of the I'd say the disabilities that people are experiencing today mentally. But included there, I think, is this idea of just having a grasp on which you've laid out today, the development of all of this that has to do with the simple fact of globalism alone. And I think Agenda 21 is the perfect explanation of that. So for anybody that might be struggling with this, or might be one of these naysayers, all they have to do is take a gander at Agenda 21. And then what you do is you take your perspectives and then you pretty much contrast them. And anyone could come to an understanding rather quickly when you show them how all of this is literally just fulfilling all of these different sustainable goals. Now, the problem with that is they might be one of these progressives that think these sustainable goals are good. They think this technology is good for humankind, and those are the ones that you're never going to get through to because they're just too lost in the sauce. But I think when you see that this has been a generational process of globalism that goes far back, we could say as far back as Nimrod, but then we could also say as early as, say, Bertrand Russell, for instance, H.G. Wells. These are individuals' works that we could look back to get an understanding of where we're at today. And then it would make a lot of sense to say, hey, no one's going to stop this. No one president's going to come in and put an end to this and just turn the tables. This has been talked about and planned out for so long, and it is finally at its ending stages, or some would argue beginning stages, that nothing's going to stop this train now. It's all about how are you going to handle it, and how are you going to deal with it in your life, because there is no returning to any normal. Things are going to be different from this point moving forward, and we just have to be prepared for what's coming, and prepare our families and get right with God. Get your house in order ASAP. Repent.
I love that you always work that in because a lot of times when I'm blathering, I forget. And you always work it in, and you're never overbearing, and you don't Bible thump, etc. Let me ask you one thing. I know you said you had an hour and a half to spare, and we're at it right now. If you can go longer, that's your call. It's no biggie. But I've got a couple of subscribers that introduced me to a thing called Rightly Divided. Have you ever heard of that?
Is
I can give you the gist.
the concept of rightly dividing the truth, or is this
No. This is biblical, where they're telling me that Jesus came here to speak to his people, meaning the Jews, and that he handed it over to one of his disciples to deal with us. I'm going to bring her on. She's one of my subscribers. It's Sheriff Rick's wife. And I don't know what to make of it. I've prayed about it, and I don't know if I've gotten an answer. If I did, I missed it, and that happens.
I've never heard of this.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring the topic up, and maybe I'll have you on when she's on. So I don't know what the deal is with it, but
do you know any little gist?
Well,
it's like a messenger or something.
The gist is Jesus handed the Gentiles, meaning us, over to one of his disciples who gave us a whole separate set of commandments to follow. And we might be see, yeah, I think Mimi's saying I shouldn't even have brought it up because
Well, I mean, just considering Gentiles, I think the two that cover the whole of the law, is love God with all your soul and might and treat your neighbor as yourself. I think those are the two laws that Gentiles need to be specifically following, and those encompass the entire law. It's pretty straightforward. So I don't really know what they would mean by another set.
Well, I'm going to bring her on. I'm going to bring her on because it's my fault. I didn't say it right. I shouldn't even have brought it up. But I'm going to bring her on and give her chance. So
sounds interesting.
It is. It's interesting. It's interesting, and it can't do any harm because at the end of the day, I still pray to God through Jesus every day. So there's no two ways about it.
I think you can't go wrong with the Gospels. I mean, if you want to keep it as simple as possible, as straightforward as possible, I think stick with the Gospels, and you could pretty much. I wouldn't suggest not taking on the volume of the book, because we are supposed to take on the volume of the book, but you find everything you need in this day in the Gospels.
No, I'm hip. I'm hip. I love this. So you're bringing false doctrines? I just said a sentence I couldn't even finish. So I was posing a question. I love people like this that bring nothing more than hate. You know what I mean? I'm in the truth community, but all I do is bring hate. I posed a question to a friend of mine while I had him on live. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The audacity of me to ask somebody something. At any rate, that was a good note to end on. False doctrines and lies with Days of Noah and Richie from Boston. And I'll tell you, that's a joke, but someone will use that in the video, so no worries. And just this one, the Noahide laws are far worse than the Sharia laws, because the Noahide laws as they're presented have subsets. We've gone over this with the Big Sib. He laid it all out. It's bad. It's bad, bad, bad. And every president of the United States has backed the Noahide laws. And they haven't backed Sharia. It's a red herring. Don't fall for it. Or you can if you want, at any rate. Anything else, brother?
I think we laid it out pretty good. Yeah. Perfect timing.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. Richie from Boston, Days of Noah. Links will be in the description. Links to everything, including this Great Barrington Declaration. If you guys want to sign it, it can't hurt. Can't hurt. We got to do everything we can right now. So that's just all there is to it. So that's what I'm doing, and you should too, or don't. Richie from Boston, Days of Noah, and we are out.